Hey, welcome to the Waffles and Wise podcast. I am Alicia Miles, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to sit before you once again and talk about all things marriage, all things wives. I really just love exploring this role and, the ministry that comes along with it. And so today I have with me Miss Tawana Farley. Hey, how are you this morning?
I am great. I'm happy to be here.
Good. I wanted to start off because I was trying to figure out how we actually met. And I still don't. I kind of do and I kind of don't. I know we have a mutual person,
Yeah,
your sister,
right.
and but I feel like we met in another capacity. And do you remember what that was?
I think we met during wedding planning for my sister.
Oh,
Yeah, because you did her invitations.
aha.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, awesome. And I think you did some work after that, maybe on some other weddings or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, awesome. So I was really, really happy that you actually selected this topic because I think you can speak to it not just from a professional standpoint, but from a personal, your personal experiences, everything of that. And I feel like this will be a really good opportunity, a more serious conversation, but in a sense can be lighthearted as well, but a more serious conversation because as I'll explain as we talk, I've gone through so many unexpected changes and not really knowing how to help my husband support me and him
right.
not knowing himself how to support me. And so I think those are the challenges that are the more serious ones that we deal with in marriage. And so this topic for today is preparing for life change and how whether we go through things together or we or go through things individually, there is a dynamic where sometimes we don't know what to do, we don't know what to say, we don't know how to behave. Our emotions get the best of us and we say things we don't mean. I think there's just so many different levels to really navigating change, which is inevitable in marriages. And so I wanted to start off. I wanted to ask you this question first, and then you can expound upon it or just be generic. But did you guys go? Well, first of all, how long have you been married? And did you guys go through marriage counseling before the big day?
Okay, so this year I will have been married for 12 years.
Okay, awesome.
And no, we did not do marriage counseling
Yeah.
before we got married. We were very young when we got married.
Uh,
I had just turned 21.
oh wow.
And yeah, so marriage counseling was nowhere near our minds at that point. We just wanted
Right.
to get married and spend our lives with each other. So
Yeah.
it went a little fast, but yeah. So no, we did not do that.
And I'm going to ask you something a little bit later. So just kind of put this on the back burner. Do you believe that marriage counseling would have changed anything? So just don't answer that question just yet. I just want to know, do you think if you had gone through marriage counseling would have changed anything? So I'll touch back with you on that before we end our conversation. But um diving into change and diving into those unexpected like illness, you know, brokenness in marriage, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, financial brokenness in marriage. Let's start talking about, when we are going through our thing, it could be, I'll give you an example for me, it's always been illness, right? But I've never felt like I navigated it properly and trying to, assist my husband with how to support me. Because I don't
Yeah,
think that people automatically know what to do in certain situations, right? I feel like people just do what they know at that moment. And then hindsight, it might be, okay, I could have handled that differently. But talk to me about, when that life change happens or when the inevitable happens or the unthinkable happens, are we responsible for how we teach or show our spouse how to support us? That's a huge question for me.
So that's a difficult question because sometimes I feel like we literally don't know how to teach someone how to support us,
Mm-hmm.
especially as women. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to say that because we're used to being the nurturers. We're used to being the person that handles that emotional bearing for our
Right.
family.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to teaching people how to support us, it's difficult for us to find the space to do that when half the time we don't know how to support ourselves.
Correct. I agree.
So um for my situation, it was not me, it was my husband,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out how to support him in something that I was completely out of my realm
Oh
in
yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
So, but again, just for my own personal experience, I've had difficulties as well, just kind of going through different stages in my life. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I was married very young.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have a full grasp of what marriage meant and what was going to come with that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a full grasp that I was not going to be the same person at in my 20s that
Yeah.
I was going to be in my 30s. Like I'm a completely different person than when I got married at 20.
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
didn't understand that with those changes, my expectations and the things that I wanted in life was going to be different, and my needs were going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like it can be difficult when one, you don't know yourself.
Right.
Two, when you're still in a phase of learning what you need and kind of understanding self-care as a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then three, how to communicate that to your spouse who's used to you being the person that handles everything emotionally for your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I
so
definitely
I
think,
think it's
yeah.
difficult.
I do. I totally agree with everything you just said because not only that, while you're going through, while you're going
Yeah.
through, you don't necessarily have the energy or the time or the withal to really explain to somebody, okay, this is what I need. Like you said, we don't know sometimes how to express what we need because we may not even know how to get
Right.
there or what we're looking for. Um, I'll give you an example, and it didn't even have anything to do with like an illness or something. My husband's our grandfather passed. And I would probably say this is the first probably death in the family that really was like close, hit the home type of thing for him. And they were close. And I didn't know that he was a type of, I didn't know that he actually shut down when he was in pain. Like I
Mm,
never, he was the type of person that's just, middle of the road unless he's upset. Like I can tell, I know when he's upset. But when you're in pain or when you don't know how to express your emotions, he just kind of shuts down. And I didn't know how to handle it. So I just kept quiet. Like I was going to say, I'll keep quiet. I'll let him come to me if he needs anything. And then there was a moment where he just completely just broke. And I was
mm.
shocked because I had never seen it before. And so I was like, what? I mean, I don't know what to do. I go trying to call him and console him. Like, I don't know what to do. And it's because I didn't know how he would receive the care that I was trying to give him. Like, does he want me to step back? Does he want me to come forward? Like, I didn't know how to adjust in that particular moment because, like you said, I had never seen it before. I didn't know how, not in my husband. I've seen it in other family members, but not in my husband. And so it was really difficult to adjust in that particular moment on what I needed to be for him. Do we need to badger ourselves when we can't do or be what our spouse needs to be all the time?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we have to come to an understanding that we're human for one.
Mhm,
We're
mhm,
gonna make mistakes. Our responses may not always be the best.
mhm.
But again, when you're in a space where you don't really understand what that person needs, you just do the best you can and what you feel is appropriate at that time.
Right. Right. I do know that in marriage we experience change. I mean, change could be anything like having children. It could be changing jobs. It could be moving. Anything that kind of creates an unstable moment in our marriages, I think, are when we really test our strength as a unit, as a team. And I've
Absolutely.
always wondered, when we're making those transitions, do we need to purposely sit down with one another and say, okay, this is about to happen in the moments that we can.
Yeah.
This is about to happen. We're about to have kids. We're about to move. We're about to have, like, do we need to intentionally sit down? And you can speak from a standpoint of how you and your husband may handle situations like this, but do we need to intentionally sit down and talk about, okay, we need to come to an agreement on what's about to happen and what we need to do? Do you and your spouse do anything like that, or just kind of wing it as it comes?
So when we were younger, I say the first year of our marriage, we were winging it.
Mm-hmm.
We
Uh-huh.
had
Uh-huh.
um I remember he got a promotion with his job and it required him to move.
Oh,
And we had just had our first baby.
oh
And
wow.
it wasn't just like a move down the street. No, we were moving about 4 hours away.
Oh no.
And it was our first time either one of us had really been away from family.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew it was just going to be me, him, and our new baby.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was so scary, but we just were like, we have to do it. It's going to be great for our family. It was more money for us, and we knew nothing about the city. We knew nothing about, what was going to happen, but we just took a leap of faith and we moved.
Yeah.
And we struggled when we moved.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We I feel like that during that time, that probably was the brokest we had ever been.
Oh, okay.
It was
Okay.
our
Okay.
first time having an apartment. It was our first time understanding budgeting and how to like really get control of our finances so that we could
Mhm.
survive. And we really had no type of safety net up there. Like I didn't have
Mhm.
family right around the corner that could come help me. So
Mhm.
it really caused us to come together as a unit and figure out like how are we going to do this, how are we going to survive, how are we going to make this work, and we had to make some major adjustments.
Mhm.
Now if we probably would have been in the mind space to think about all of those elements before we left,
Yeah.
we might have not made such a rash decision to move, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
we were just so excited for this new opportunity, for his career, and all those things. And we just took a leap of faith. I'm thankful we did it. Do I wish that we, at that time, been more prepared?
Yeah.
Yes. But in the midst of it, I'm thankful that we got that experience. I'm thankful we got that experience away from family
Yeah.
because it forced us
That's
to
good.
figure out things on our own. And
Mhm.
again, we were really young. So it really forced us to grow up. It forced us to figure things out. And
Fast.
it forced us to understand what marriage really looks like. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't fairy tale anymore. Like this was real
Yeah.
stuff. Like we had to
Real
figure out
stuff.
what we was gonna eat.
You're
So
right. Right. Right.
it made us closer and it made us appreciate just that struggle and being able to have that struggle together and to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. I really
But
like
now in our second tier of marriage, absolutely, we have to discuss things. We have to figure out how things are going to work.
you've
We
been
have to
through it.
see how
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you said that really I was like, yes, that's exactly what you want to happen, is you need to have those moments where you have a little bit of struggle, that you have a little bit of conflict, because I think it does help you identify, okay, this is how he responds in moments like this. This is how I
Right.
respond. And in somewhere in between is the truth of the matter. Like
Right.
somewhere in between is the truth of everything that we're experiencing. And I think it's important that you don't shy away from the hard parts. that you go through them, that you figure out what works for you. Like you said, as a team, we're going to figure this out together, and being able to explore, different ways of handling conflict, I think is very, very important in marriage, because if you feel like it's always going to be hunky dory, oh, we're just living over here in roses and peonies all the time, it's just not realistic.
Right.
We love marriage, we love our spouses, we love the fact that we get to share so much with someone. I think it's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, I think we have to be mindful that, we're gonna have difficult times, and we have to figure out how to navigate what that looks like. But you brought up something also that I want to touch on, and that's making adjustments in like the blink of an eye.
Mhm.
Having to just switch gears immediately. And sometimes you don't take in consideration, or you can't take in consideration how you feel about it. Like it just
Mhm.
has to happen, regardless of how I feel. It has to happen. This change has to happen, or we have to do something different. Um, I wanted to kind of pick your brain on when we're going through those difficult times, and it's just all of a sudden like nobody had the opportunity to prepare. When we're going through those moments, do you think that in marriage in particular, is that an opportunity for us to go to somebody who may have experienced that and say, hey, how did y'all deal with it? Is that a moment where you say, we don't know what this is, but we got to get it done? I'm always leery, but I want to know, you know, can you ask people that have maybe gone through that blink of an eye experience on how they handle it, and let that be kind of like I don't know, a tool or a resource for how you might want to handle it in your marriage? I'm just curious as to what you think about it.
Okay. Well, I can just tell you from my experience, just a blink of an eye moment. My husband had got really ill at one point, and it was mental related. And it was something that I had never experienced. It was something that my family really didn't understand either. And it was like in a blink of an eye, I was a stay at home mom for all these years. And
Oh,
it's like overnight, I became the head of household.
mm,
So, and
mhm,
I really didn't have a chance to figure out, okay, how I feel about it, or this and that. I had to make things happen
right.
for the sake of my family. And it was such a quick thing, but he wasn't in the he wasn't in the mindset to
Mhm,
lead at that point. It was a
mhm.
situation where I had to truly step in on his behalf
I got you.
and lead our family
Got you.
so that we would be okay until he was okay.
Right. Right.
So in that instance, I had to go to support groups to figure
Ah,
out what other people were
okay.
doing,
Yes, 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 yes.
because no one in my family had experienced this and
Good.
nobody had answers for me.
Mm,
It was out of everyone's realm. So we were all just like, what is happening?
right.
What is this? What is going on? And
Mhm,
there were so many limited resources for me at that time. So the best thing I could do, I had to go online and do my research. I had
mhm,
to educate myself, and I had to find other people that had went through the same thing. And when
mhm,
I found that support group, and those support group of just family members that
mhm,
had experienced what I experienced, I just felt so much relief that I was not alone, that I actually
mhm,
had a sounding board and
mhm.
other people that were
Right.
experiencing the same thing,
Yeah.
because it can be so isolating when you feel like you're the only person, or that no one around you can assist you in something.
Mhm,
And then a lot of times in our community, we're very hush hush about things.
mhm,
Like we don't talk about certain things.
mhm,
So, and then people don't expect you to talk about certain things either. So,
mhm,
in my situation, it was almost like a taboo thing to talk about.
mhm.
And nobody had an answer because you weren't really supposed to talk about it.
Right.
It was like a
Right.
stigma attached to it.
Uh-huh.
So it just made me feel like it's, you know, it made me feel like I was a stain and it was hard to look at.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
And I really hope that people, especially with marriage, because people don't talk about those hard things. You really only see the glamour, the glitz and glamour of people's
Right.
relationship.
Right.
And people are really secretive about the hard times that they go through.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
really hope that people are becoming more open and that people do have people that they can go to and say, hey, for example, infidelity. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of heard the grapevine that this was something that you all went through. Can you help me through that? And
Mm-hmm.
just be open to talk about it instead of
Yes,
making it act like it never happened.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally
So
agree.
I hate that I had to kind of go outside to find that support and I couldn't really find it within my circles. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, I'm glad that I had that support group because it helped me in so many ways. Because again, it was something I was just unfamiliar with and
Mhm.
I didn't have any type of connections to try to help me have some type of guidance or background on what they did.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm so glad you brought that up. I didn't even think about the support that you could get outside of your family. Like, that wasn't, like you said, because it's not something we talk about. So it
Yeah.
wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. I felt like, you always go to your family, but you're right. What if they don't have the answers or they never experienced it either? Where do you go? And the fact that you thought, okay, support groups. I need some outside help, or I might need some type of foundation to help me get through this, and being able to have those resources, I think, are very important. But you are so right. We don't like to talk about it. We
Right.
don't talk about it because we feel like, one, we're going to be judged. I
Mhm.
think we're just going to be judged by, when in fact, I'm not judging you at all because I'm going through it too. I mean, I
Right.
think you are so right that we have to get to a point where it's okay for us to discuss our experiences, because somebody has gone through what you've gone through at some point in their life, or they've experienced it, and not being able to talk about it has to be a really difficult space to be in. Or not
Right.
knowing that you actually have someone somewhere that you can talk to help you get through, your hardest times. I will say, the very early in our marriage, we didn't really get married all that young. We got married at like 26, 27, I think, somewhere around there. We've been married for 17 years. And out of 23, we've been together for 23. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh Lord, this is how this is for half my life. But okay. Um, but I think about earlier in our marriage, I went through counseling myself.
Right.
I think it was because I was going through a lot of things that I just wasn't expecting to experience. And it didn't necessarily have to do with anything that happened in our marriage. I think it was me going through a really rough spot. And I knew that if I didn't get a hold of it, that I was gonna make my marriage a living hell for my husband if I did not address the issues that I was having. And so I opted to go by myself. Hindsight, I think I would have invited him in so
Yeah.
that he could see, when this is the reason why I react this way, or this is the reason why I feel this way. Or I think inviting him in definitely would have gave him some insight into how to communicate with me, going forward. Um, but I'm going back to the question that we talked about, the marriage counseling. Okay. Um, you didn't have it. We basically didn't have it. I mean, we were
Yeah.
supposed to go through, and I think we went to one section and that was it. And so I want to know, do you think that marriage counseling would have changed anything? Had you guys done it prior to getting married? Do you think it would have changed, or just kind of give me your insight on what you think you would have experienced had you gone through marriage counseling?
I absolutely think it would have made a difference,
Mhm.
especially now that I'm in this field.
Mhm.
Um, I just understand the importance of both individual counseling
Mhm.
and marriage counseling
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
Because we all have like these traumas that we,
Me
you
too.
know, have to process and heal from. But a lot of times we don't process that trauma and we bring it into our marriages. And there was a lot of things that my husband had went through as a child that was really traumatic. that he never processed. I mean, same with me. And it was just like, I don't know how we thought that it wasn't gonna come up at any point in our marriage. I don't know how we even thought that at one point it wasn't gonna rear its head. And
No.
that's exactly what happened. It
Yeah.
didn't happen right away,
Yeah.
but it happened later on in this marriage because it was never properly processed, and it reared its head, in the form of mental illness, but in all sense, it was trauma that was unprocessed. So I feel like if we would have really had that individual counseling and had that marriage counseling so that we could really pinpoint the things that we needed to work on as individuals before we became a couple, I really honestly think it would have made a world of difference, and things might have played out differently later on.
I definitely, I know for a fact, like you said, it would have definitely helped us because we're two different type of communicators. Like I will literally hold something in until I'm ready to explode, and by that time I'm angry. And the way that I communicate what I feel should not be given in anger. And so he automatically puts up like this defense, like I got to fight, because she's giving me something that I wasn't ready for. Had she told me months ago that this was an issue before it became serious, I could probably handle it a little better. And so I think definitely teaching us how to communicate with each other would have been a huge thing. We figured it out, of course. Like you said, you figured it out. You go through it and you figure it out. And I'm grateful for those moments that we had difficulty. Now I know, and he knows how to properly communicate how we feel and express those things. My next question: what happens? And I'm so glad we're having this conversation. What happens if you have a spouse that, we need counseling, we need help, and then you have the other house, I ain't going, I don't need that, I don't want nobody telling me what to do. How do you, yes, how do you get through that? Because that's a difficult space, especially when you have somebody that knows there's work that needs to be done and you need some support to do it. And then you have someone that's like, we don't need nobody in our marriage. We don't need nobody telling us what to do. And it's just hard trying to navigate the problems that could arise when you're not on the same page. So talk to us about, what happens when you have a spouse that's not willing to go through any type of counseling.
You're going to continue having problems in your marriage because you have one person that's healing and you have one person that's not. So the conversations are going to look different. Perspectives are going to look different. And you have this person that's in this space where, okay, maybe I'm not going to communicate anymore with cussing you out, throwing things and stuff like that, because now I understand those behaviors and I understand where they stem from. But if I have a spouse that's still behaving that way when we're having arguments, it can be really difficult. Then it comes to a point where if you have to realize that this person cannot meet you emotionally, then you have to make a choice. Either you're going to set up some boundaries of what this person can and cannot do, or what you're going to accept, or you're going to have to make a decision that I understand this person cannot meet me emotionally and I've decided to stay, or I'm going to decide to leave because I know this person can't meet me emotionally where I need them to be. It's a choice.
That's so
but
good.
You can't go into it making that choice. You have to make that choice understanding that this person is not going to be able to meet you where you are.
I think that's so good. That is so good because it is a choice. Like you said, you're either gonna set boundaries or you're gonna accept it. And I think that's so true. And I think a lot of times the problems that we run into is that we accept it because we want to preserve our marriage. We do whatever we can to preserve our marriage. And a lot of women, a lot of wives accept behavior that is not conducive to the success of the marriage. We accept it because we think, oh, he'll change. Or, this is just temporary. When in fact, if they continue to show you the same behavior, like you said, it's not going to change and it's not going to get better because you haven't required more and you
Right.
just sat back and accepted it. And I think, to your point, it is important that you don't make a rash decision. Like it has to be something where you constructively sat down and said, okay, I've asked for this and he
Mhm.
continues to do this or she continues to do this. And unfortunately, nothing is changing. Then you really do have to take a step back and say, okay, I don't want to stay in this situation because you're
Right.
always going to be unhappy. Somebody's going to be unhappy
Mhm.
if you're not able to come to like an agreement on how you're supposed to manage whatever it is that you're going through. Um, have you thinking about the experience that you and your husband have had and the fact that you have to make adjustments. What have you learned about yourself as his spouse or as a woman in general in life as a mother? Thinking about the things that he's gone through and how you guys have been able to incorporate that into your daily structure of how you manage your life and your family together. What has Tawana learned about herself in this process?
I have learned how resilient I truly am.
Mm.
I am a resilient human being.
Mhm.
And I don't think I understood how resilient I was before um everything happened the way it did.
Mhm. Mhm.
That I'm capable of picking up pieces and making something beautiful with them.
That's good.
Um,
That's good. Yeah.
but also just understanding just the true definition of love,
Mhm.
just through this experience and just how love in the face of adversity,
Mhm.
how it could just change you as a person.
Mhm. Mhm.
I will not leave this earth without understanding the definition of true love because I have lived it. I
Mhm.
have shown it. I have been
Absolutely.
through it.
Mhm.
So that's definitely, I think, the key thing that I learned, just the definition of true, transparent love.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you found out that about yourself because think about all the amazing things that you will be able to accomplish because you realize that, hey, I can get through this. Like that's nothing. That's nothing. This is
Right.
nothing compared to what I've been through. I can figure this thing out and I can make something happen. And I love the fact that you realize that that makes you a stronger individual. It makes you a better
Mhm.
mom. It makes you a better daughter, sister, friends, wife. It just makes you so much better. And that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, or why I started Waffles and Wives in general was um, I didn't have a frame of reference for marriage.
Yeah.
My mom never married, and I never saw her and my dad have a relationship or her even have serious relationships. And I just always wondered if I had seen it, would I've known, a little bit more about how to approach certain situations. And that's not necessarily true. I think you're still going to go through your things. But for me, I just wonder, um, a lot of times what ends up happening with me when I think about my marriage and things that I've been through, I needed support. And so that was one of the reasons why I ventured into Waffles and Wives. And you came to the event last year and really just trying to navigate exactly how we can support each other because I do believe that marriage is a true foundation of strong families. And like you said, the resiliency that we all, will go through at some point in our life. I think it doesn't have to be a difficult space to be in. And I didn't want marriage to always be something difficult. Like I wanted us to be able to talk about it. And so that was the reason why I started. And I wanted to reach more people with the podcast. And so having these types of conversations, I think are very critical um, to our progress as individuals, but also for our families. And so I wanted to ask you this. Thinking about, how did you And I'm just curious, with the support that you were getting to help your husband go through his season, that bad season for him. Seasons can be up and down.
Right.
Um, did you have to make some significant change? Like, I know making the transition to be the head of the household was probably significant, but did you have to adjust anything else in terms of how you communicate and in terms of how you ran the household? Did you feel like you were walking on pins and needles on some days because you didn't know what to expect? And in that process, how have you guys kind of transitioned into the new season of life? I mean, are you still going through it, or how you turned a corner? What's different now, and tell me, what were you experiencing while you were going through it?
While I was going through it, it definitely was just a huge learning curve.
Okay.
Because we were dealing with doctors, medications, and like all these different new things that were happening. And then in the midst of that, we had these 3 children that were they were confused at what was happening as well. And kind of what you were saying, I didn't really have like a set model of what a happy marriage looked like. And I was so headstrong on making sure I modeled that for my children.
Right.
And it was one of my leading things going into marriage. Even getting married so young, it was like one of my lead things that I wanted to kind of break that curse, and show that to my children what healthy love looked like.
Yeah.
So when this happened, it just completely, it broke me in a way, because I was just like, oh my gosh, what are my children going to see? What are they're going to be traumatized? What are they going to grow up thinking, But knowing that, I had to really change my perspective and just how I spoke to my husband, how I talked to him, how I cared for him. I still wanted to model to my children that compassion is love, empathy is love. Even in difficult moments, you still care for the person that you love.
Right.
So the way I spoke to my husband, the way I supported him, the way I just stood in the gap, I wanted them to be able to see that sometimes this is what marriage is going to look like.
Good.
You have to stand in the gap.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, it was difficult because he wasn't in the right headspace for a little bit. And so his communication was off, and his communication was very bizarre and things like that. And I had to come into a space of separating him from his illness, which is a very difficult thing to do sometimes.
Okay, I understand.
And just staying in a space of grace and empathy. And I had a quote that I would read to myself every day when I got up in the morning, and it said, if I start with empathy, I can lead with grace. And I still say that to myself every day, because it's true. If I wake up and I understand this person is going through a difficult time, and I'm just standing in the doorway until he comes back, until he's able to balance himself, it made life so much easier to kind of go through that hard, difficult time of what I call it was just the chaos period, where you're trying to figure out things, where you're trying to balance out that person and stuff like that. It just made it so much easier to go through that, understanding that I know who this person is. I know who you are. And that's what I would tell him every day. I know who you are. I know who I married. I know you're not that person right now, but I know who you are.
Right.
So when he came back, when he, of course, he's stable now. We were able to figure out the right med combination to help him get balance back. And he's been stable for almost 8 to 9 years now.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So he's been stable. We've been doing really well. But as he's stable and he sees what I do in the community now, because now I talk to other family members and caretakers and things like that, just from that experience, so that they can understand how to navigate that situation as well.
Mhm.
And we talk, and our communication is so much better now because of that experience, because he understands just basically what I went through as his spouse,
Mhm.
standing in that gap for him.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
had to make that very clear to him because, again, he wasn't in the space to really understand that. But again, we have really found just a level of honesty, a level of transparency, and
Mhm.
trust. Our level of trust with each other is so much at a higher level than what
Right.
it was when we first got married, because he knows
I can see that
I got
happening. Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knows that with his all of his being, he knows I got him. So
Mhm.
our level of trust with everything is just, it's at a different level now, and it's beautiful. So
Um, good, 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 good. I'm happy for that. So that leads me to, as we start to wind down our conversation, and this is really, really, really good stuff. I feel like this is gonna help somebody in their marriage right now that's going through a season of, like you said, chaos.
yeah,
And not really having, like you said, an immediate support system to grab hold to and say, hey, I need help. But also, even if you do have a support system, knowing that you can go to them without being judged,
right.
without being criticized. I think that's also important. So I think you should be careful also, even if you do have a circle. I think you do need to be careful with who you share um those intimate spaces with, hoping and praying that they will protect your peace as much as possible. I think it's important. So tell me, was this experience for you the reason why you decided to go into mental health care? Um, okay, okay. So talk to me about this journey that you started as a result of being that person that stood in the gap and understood what was required, and now being able to talk people through it. What does that do for you? I can imagine that it's a sweet spot to be in because
Yeah.
you've been through it and now you're helping other people navigate what that looks like. So um talk to me about it's Mama Mental, right? Am I right? Did I say that right? Talk to me about how you got to this space and what it means for you and your family and everybody that you come in contact with. What does this do for Tawana?
Oh my gosh, it makes it complete. It's a complete circle for me.
Mhm.
It makes me feel like I have a purpose driven life and that I am fulfilling the call that God placed on my life.
Mhm.
Um, I changed my whole career trajectory
Mhm.
after this happened. And I went into the mental health field because I was just like, people need more resources. My community needs more education.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
people need to understand that it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
And I think that's a hard space to be in, especially for our community, because we're so used to feeling like we don't have the privilege to be okay, to not be okay.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
So um I went into the field first through the support groups. The support groups helped me so much. I started training to be a trainer myself, and then
Mhm.
started running support groups
Mhm.
in our area for other family members that were kind of going through the same thing, to help be that sounding board and to give them the resources and what they need to do and things like that.
Mhm.
And then from there, I just wanted to take it a step deeper, and I went back to school. I went back to school to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling so that I could become a
Okay.
therapist.
Okay.
And my specialization is in trauma and crisis,
Oh,
because
awesome.
that's what I went.
Yes.
So, and then Mama Mental came about because I wanted to create something where people can also express themselves, but through shirts, but
Mhm.
also gave resources. So I created a resource shirt that kind of had all the numbers listed that you could call for support on the back of the shirt.
Good. That's
And
so
that's still my number one seller till this day,
so good.
because it's a very silent way. Because again, people don't like to express that they need help. But if you're standing behind someone at a store and you see all these hotlines on the back, you see the 988 number, you see the hotline for domestic abuse, you see the number for this and that. It's just a really silent way to say, I support you, I'm rooting for you. Here's a resource if you're in trouble. So, and then I started a blog through the Mama Mental through my website, just again to show people they're not alone. Like, you have support. There's other people that's been through the same thing. It might not be something that people talk about, but I want to talk about it. I want to shout it to the rooftop. I don't want it to be a secret.
Right.
I don't want it to continue to be the stigma where people are just hush about it and act like it doesn't exist. Because this existed for as long as we can remember, for centuries. They just didn't have a name to it.
You're absolutely right.
So again, just creating a platform to do that and then making it my work to do that. So I'm actually in my internship right now. I'm in the last leg of my internship. And it's been an amazing journey because the place I'm doing my internship at is one of the only places that during one of my moments of crisis where I just was kind of at my breaking point with my husband, I needed someone to talk to us. They were the only ones that took us in that day and kind of helped us get resources. And to go back to them now as a person within my field and to start my internship, every time I step in that building, I'm just like, it's full circle. Like, I get emotional. I'm just like, I was once in here as a client, and now I'm in here as a therapist in training.
That is so great.
My community. So it's definitely, like I said, full circle moment. And I just want to live a purpose-driven life, and I try to do that every day. So yeah.
Purpose-driven life. I can so relate because I don't know where Waffles and Wives is gonna take me. And to be quite honest with you, Tawana, I don't even know why this was even placed on my heart to do. I came up with the reason in my head about why I thought this was the purpose for it. And the more and more I talk to people, I'm just asking God, okay, what are you up to? Like, what are you up to? Like, why is this happening? Why me? Why am I the medium for these conversations that happen? And I know we shouldn't oftentimes question, the work that he's doing, but I'm still like in awe of how people have responded to being transparent, to being open, to recognizing that we are not in this alone. As you mentioned so many times, that it is important for us to explore ways to support each other. And I think when we silo ourselves into thinking that we don't need anybody or we got this, those are the moments where we get so overwhelmed and so just out of pocket that we don't really think about, okay, wait a minute, let me stop. I need some help. And so I really appreciate you because I think that this was a really awesome conversation about, how to navigate those things that we just not expecting. Like, we just don't expect certain things to happen. And but noticing that it's okay, like you said, to not be okay, that may not be something that you're comfortable with, and it's okay. It is okay. And I think that definitely is something in our community that we don't necessarily express enough. And so people are suffering in silence a lot of times. And so I really want to thank you so much. And so before we end our conversation, I always ask this question: is there any advice that you could give someone, whether it's on this topic, on navigating, and then at the end, before you end your answer to the question, I do want you to tell people how they can support get the t-shirt and all that stuff, what website they can go to. I do want you to say that. Tell us about that. But is there any advice that you have for women that desire to be married? I know there's so many people that desire to be married and they want so much to, be booed up. And so what do you think? What advice would you give anyone, male or female? I don't care what it is. What advice would you give someone who desires to be married?
Okay, well, read the fine print. Fine print meaning your vows. Because a lot of time people are like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up. But you did. You did sign up for this. You
Mhm.
signed up for richer or poor,
Mhm.
for better or worse, for sickness and health. Like you signed up for this. You just didn't read the fine print. All
Mhm.
you really remember on your wedding day is I do. And you think that's it, but you don't really consider all the I don'ts, you know? So my suggestion for people that are thinking of getting married is, for one, like we said earlier, really consider marriage counseling, premarital counseling.
Okay.
Consider individual counseling for you and your fiance,
Mhm.
because it makes a difference to unlock those things that maybe you all just haven't discussed for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And to really look at those vows and figure out if you're truly ready to honor them.
Ooh.
Because a lot of times people go into marriage, like I said, not understanding what they signed up for. Didn't read the fine
There
print.
you go. Yes, read the fine print. Read
Yes.
it. Absolutely. So tell us how we can get a hold of this, what you're doing. How can we support what you're doing and getting the word out that, there are resources available if you need them? How can we support that? How can we do that?
So my website is mamamental.com, and that's one word, mama, MAMA, mental, MENTAL.com. And then I have it on my website. I have a tab for resources,
Okay.
and then my shirts are on there. I have a variety of different mental health related shirts if
Okay.
you all are interested. And yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
Awesome. So awesome stuff. I'm so happy that you decided to join me, Tawana. This actually made me feel really good because I was starting to question whether or not I was doing things right.
Yeah.
Um, in my marriage, but also in my career. Believe it or not, something that you said just kind of sparked me to rethink a decision that I think I made in haste. And so, listening to you talk through what been through and how we can, really change what that looks like. I really, 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 really appreciate you today. So I'm going to sign off. This has been a wonderful conversation. Please support mamamental.com. If you know someone who's going through some issues, if it's you and your spouse, yourself, or, friend, definitely go to her website to see if there's any resources that she has available so you can get the support that you need. Change in marriage is inevitable. You are going to go through ups and downs, backwards, forwards, all kinds of things, some massive, some small. But how you actually choose to navigate it together is important and it will help you sustain your marriage. So I want you to hold on for a second while I close us out. But catch this episode. It's going to come on at 6 p.m. I think I have it scheduled for the 10th. I could be wrong, but I'll make sure that I'll notify you and you can notify your friends and family about the date. But I'll make sure we get that out so we can get people on this podcast because I really love this episode. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining the Waffles and Wives podcast. I will see you next week. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.